is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. It's a rather small Thursday 5-game slate, but we're here, as usual, with Mr. Travis Mangone, breaking down the games, talking pitching, stacks, everything you guys hopefully need to know to get to the top of tournaments. And Travis, we are officially 2 weeks away from the NFL kickoff, Chiefs and Ravens. Listen, we got plenty of time to talk about baseball. We got an hour, but I know you're with me where, Olympics are cool. We love baseball, but we need this football season to get going, right? It's that time of year.
Yeah, I mean, Olympics were cool, right? We had like the soccer summer stuff. I don't even know what that league was. And you had fun. Yeah, Euro. All you guys had fun with that. I was more in the summer league streets, so that was a lot of fun. And dude, we have college football literally in like 2 days. So obviously we have our college football package up. I'm sure if you're here for baseball and not college football, but if you just like college football, and we have that package up. And college football is at least it's not the greatest slate to start it off, but next week on Thursday, DC, you got games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Listen, man. I know it's, what was it, a 3-game slate on Saturday for college? But yes. This is our first real games that matter, right? Like, I know, yes, we've had preseason football, but to me, that's not the same as two football teams competing their best to win a game, which preseason football is not that, right? It's being on top of the news. It's not necessarily knowing who the best players are. So, man, I'm ready. I know you are too. I know the RPS crew is in general. We're ready for football season. We're here for it.
Yeah. Are you? How many? Actually, this is a good question. How many best ball drafts have you done, DC? Because, like, I mean, I definitely have done a lot so far. I feel like I have a ton under my belt. So I'm curious how many you got. In terms of finished drafts, I'm about 130 in. And then I've got another 90 or so slow drafts on Underdog that are, probably a few of them are on the clock as we speak right now. And then I am planning to max out the DraftKings $20, the big one, right? 1.5 million at first. I'm at like 60 or 70. I've only done fast drafts for that, so no slow drafts on that one for me. And what do we have? Yeah, I mean, 14 days. So I think I can get it done doing like 10 a day or so. What about you? Where are you at on the best ball streets? Yeah, you have me beat because of your slow drafts, but I've only done DK, hashtag DK partner, I guess. Yeah, I don't know, but I've only done those. I just like those ones better than the Underdog ones, and I'm at 140. So I've been beating up pretty good, but you've really crushed it so far. You surprised me that you have that many so far, and if you're gonna max that $20, you're gonna definitely be not taking a lot of hikes over the next couple of weeks. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's these slow drafts, man. They start with 8-hour clocks. It's 18 rounds. They literally take like 3 weeks to get done. Every time you're up, you got to go back and like look at your entire team, who you have, who you're trying to stack, the bye weeks, all that stuff, and it is a little bit of a grind, but, it makes the football season that much more fun when it does kick off, right? Obviously, we've got the DFS stuff, which will continue to be our main stuff, but it's fun to have, when your big stand running back or wide receiver or QB goes down with an injury in the first quarter of week 1. It's rough, but at least you've got those best ball teams, right? You can go check out those guys, see how they're doing. I think that's at least part of the appeal.
Well, here's a couple of things. One, did you see on DK specifically, and everyone can benefit from this? You know how like you have like you can activate your bonus or whatever. Did you see that conversation on Twitter yesterday?
I did see it, and I left it before it was concluded on what the best strategy for the crown accrual, right?
Yeah, we think the move is to activate your boost on that Thursday for sure. Like it sounds like
Chiefs Ravens Thursday activated.
Yeah, because that's when all the best balls start, and like your missions are like if you did like a mission like for like do a $20 contest and you entered a best ball that day, they're all waiting there ready to like go through, and they haven't gone through yet. So we're assuming that's the move. So I would do that. You're probably playing a lot on that Thursday Night Football anyway, so I think it just naturally makes sense too. So that's what I would do if I were you. And then my other question was, what is your take on in best ball? Like, are you a big person of you want to take a huge stand on certain players, or are you allocating more? Because I'm definitely more of an allocator. I have stands on certain players, but like I don't have like anyone that I have 50%. Like I don't have anything egregious like that.
So I thought this was the first season that I've done like a real volume best ball drafting. I'll probably get to, I don't know, 300 plus teams for sure. I think in past years, maybe my max was like 60 or 70. And I thought coming into the year where I did plan to get some volume down that I would be a big stand player. But I've got, a lot of drafts under my belt right now, and you can see where you stand on percentages. And I don't really have anybody over like 30, 35% would be my absolute maximum on any player. That maybe could change over the next couple of weeks. But I'm with you. I think if you're drafting a lot of teams, I think it makes sense a little bit to play the ADP game, right? Because we don't want to be so certain on our takes. We're not. I mean, nobody really should be. There's so much chaos in the NFL that you don't want to just be all in on. I don't know. Did you see there's this guy, Hit Him With the Gritty is his Twitter name, and he's got like in 150 best ball.
Najee Harris, right? Is it that one?
Well, Najee Harris, and then he's got another like 82% Chase Claypool from all these best ball millionaire, and you don't want to be that guy, right? I think it's better to spread it around than that guy.
Correct. Like if I told you my highest owned guy at each position, and I mean, I'm very happy with my 30% J.K. Dobbins. He's my highest running back. My highest receiver is Mr. Greg Dortch, who you and I have, had some.
I've got a lot of Dortch too, so we're on the same side this season.
Yep, 26%. Then tight end, 15% is my highest, and it's Kyle Pitts, and I'm okay with it. I'm not like loving it, but again, it's 15%. So everything
I got a lot of Pitts.
Yeah. And then this one is the gross one that like I don't love, and like I'm sure that will like as I finish up my drafts that'll get down, but it's at 15% is my top quarterback, and it's Daniel Jones. I don't love it, but it just is what it is. But I think quarterback is weird because like you can't just get like it's really impossible to get like 40% Patrick Mahomes or something like that if you do enough of these. So I don't know. When I get the cheap guy, just look at him and he's a running quarterback, so I just go with that.
The quarterback position is the one, but the position where I'm most concentrated. Most of the top guys, so Mahomes, but for me it's Mahomes, Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, some Josh Allen, some Lamar, but I do think the elite upside quarterbacks are a little bit undervalued this year. So I know
I agree.
People, yeah.
I've just so you know, I've flipped that script lately with drafting, and I've made sure to really prioritize them. So I agree with you. I think I'm happy to hear that you're on that. It sounds like we're aligned on a lot of things so far.
Yeah, works for me. David Askio show just starting. Might as well have, because we spent the first 10 minutes talking about the NFL. But with that, let's get into the true topic of today's show, baseball. And we have Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. First game here. We've got the rookie phenom, Paul Skeens, pitching for the Pirates. I'm sure people that watch the show or, subscribers to RPS know that I was on Skeens from the very, very first start. He got called up to the big leagues. It seemed like it happened later in the year, but it was actually May 11th. So it was only like a month and a half that they kept him down. He's been fantastic all year. Obviously started the All-Star game for the NL and is still the favorite to win NL Rookie of the Year. Look at his last 4 games. Hasn't eclipsed 21 fantasy points in any of the last 4 starts. His last 2 games, he threw 91 and 93 pitches. The 3 prior to that, he was over 100. They're saying, the Pirates, who don't really have anything to play for, that they're going to not shut Skeens down, but to monitor his workload. We've seen this, Mangone, with a breakout star pitcher on in the other league, Garrett Crochet. And one of the weird things that happened with Crochet when they said they were going to start limiting his pitch count, he got less effective, right? And I personally think that's something to do with just changing the mindset of, oh, now I got to try to strike out everybody while I'm out there for my, 3, 4, 5 innings instead of just pitching your normal game. So I don't think Skeens is a bad play whatsoever. He is going to be, it looks like, owned by over half the field. The Sabres got him at 53% ownership. Pretty good matchup, right, against Cincinnati. So I'm not going to say don't play Paul Skeens. I'll have exposure to him, but I'm a little bit concerned about him basically for the first time. I've played him a ton this year, obviously mostly to good results. And then Nick Lodolo, a guy I've been on for the last, 2 or 3 years. He's had some big starts. Frankly, this year he's been a little bit disappointing. I mean, obviously the -13 last time out against Kansas City was horrific. But, I mean, prior to that, you got to scroll back a long way before he was a slate-breaking performer at starting pitcher. I still like him here at 8K. I'm starting to wane a little bit on my Nick Lodolo love. He just doesn't seem to get it done more often than not, rather. But I do like Lodolo here. Looks like he should be about half the ownership of Skeens. I actually think that considered, I lean the Lodolo side. And then, obviously, any bats in this game I think are going to be pretty contrarian for the most part. But I'll throw it over to you, Mangone. What do you see Cincinnati and Pittsburgh here?
Yeah, so I think the Crochet situation, there's definitely similarities, but I think the biggest difference that I noticed is like Crochet basically said, like, I'm not pitching, like, unless I'm on like a team that's going to make the playoffs, and I'm not pitching on the playoffs, like, unless I get like a contract, right? Like there was a little bit of differences, I think, there. But the one argument I'll make with the Skeen stuff is like the reason to fade is the ownership, and on top of the ownership, there's other really good options on the slate. The argument not to is the matchup's amazing for Skeens, right? I mean, whenever anyone is against Cincinnati, we consider them basically. It could be a bad pitcher against Cincinnati and we'd be considering him. Like I played some Rodriguez yesterday because he was going up against Cincinnati, right? So I think Skeens is fine, but I think we definitely have to give a strong look at a lot of these other options and really consider it. Like, so we'll obviously dive in and keep talking about it as we keep going through the slate, but I don't think it's the same as Crochet. Like I'm not as worried about Skeens.
I didn't mean to make it the same case as Crochet.
Okay.
I was only trying to make the case, I don't know, honestly just playing devil's advocate a little bit for a pitcher that's going to be, I mean, probably, what do you think he ends up at? I think he's going to be over 50% owned. So I think it's important to talk about, what could go wrong is all I was really trying to do.
Yeah, that and like the other reason you could make is, like I said, like there's a lot of good pitchers on this slate. Are they in ideal matchups? No, they're not in ideal spots, but they are good pitchers. Like Dylan Cease is a great example. He's going to get the Mets. It's not an ideal spot, but he went in against the Nationals in not an ideal spot, and he pitched a no-hitter, right? So like these things are possible. There's elite pitchers on this slate. It's definitely an elite pitching slate for a 5-gamer, as we've joked about on some of these short slates that I've done with you for sure. So I agree, though. Skeens, he doesn't feel like this guy I want to hit the lock button on. I definitely want to think about what I'm doing with him. Lodolo's an interesting one because he's only 8K. And again, he's a really good pitching option going against this Pirates team. I want to see what the lineup is because I always like when, Joey Bart's in there. I always like when he's in there because he's definitely a ton of strikeouts waiting to happen. Same with O'Neal Cruz. I know he's got power, but he does have strikeouts in there too. So overall, I don't like the bats in this game. It's really just mainly for me, I want to look at the pitching and consider them. Lodolo is going to be the third highest owned right now, around 25%. I think I like a couple other options that are cheaper than him that I'd rather take chances on in some tougher matchups, but Lodolo is definitely in the conversation as a good pitcher on this slate.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What about individual bats? If you're trying to pick off someone against either of these pitchers, because I don't think either of these offenses is going to be really owned at all. Are there any individual bats to you, Mangone, that stand out as good contrarian plays and frankly good leverage plays because both these pitchers are going to have a fair amount of ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I would say probably mainly the lefties, like Ellie De La Cruz, who's East Switch, obviously, or TJ Friedel, not Dominic Smith. I know he's finally on this team. I think it's really those two on the Reds that I'd specifically look at. And like, listen, we've talked about it before. Ellie can break any slate, right? I mean, he's gone up against, there was one matchup where he went up against a tough pitcher on a short slate. I remember you talked about, and he got like 40 DK points. Like, it's certainly possible. Guy's over 60 stolen bases, so would not surprise me at all. On the Pirates side, I think O'Neal Cruz, you could argue for. I know it's lefty, but he just has so much upside, right? Like when he gets a hold of the ball, it's an absolute bomb typically. So I'd put him in that conversation, and then probably Brian Reynolds, I think you'd have to put there. Joey Bart as well. I know he can swing and miss, but I would probably put him in there as well. And then maybe Grandal too is like a punt option, but that's really it. I'm not dying to get to some of these Pirates and Reds. It's mainly looking at minis or just like a one-off option.
Yeah, these pitchers are expensive enough and highly owned enough that you don't necessarily have to pick off something against them to benefit from a mediocre or bad start. So I'm with you there. Personally, I'm with you. Ellie De La Cruz, the best play against Skeens, and then against Lodolo, I would say Joey Bart would be my number one. He does have power from the right side, gets the platoon advantage against Lodolo, hitting third, 3,900 at the worst position. Joey Bart makes some sense to me if you're not on the Nick Lodolo train tonight. Let's get to the next game on the slate. It is the LA Angels and the Toronto Blue Jays. Looks like a bullpen game for the Blue Jays. They're going to start Ryan Burr, who looks like he will pitch probably one inning, maybe, 1 2/3 or something like that. But he's not going to be out there long. It will be Ryan Yarbrough coming in for the Blue Jays after him. It looks like, at least. Soft tossing lefty. I would expect 2 or 3 innings out of him. Hasn't pitched since August 17th, so he should be fresh at least. But this series, Mangone, this Angels-Blue Jays series in Toronto, one of these two teams has performed well, or both. I think in all of these games, ball's been flying in Toronto. You got Griffin Canning on the other side for the Angels. I wouldn't be surprised to see some runs here. I'm really not on either offense. My dog's making a ruckus, so I got to go tend to that. But talk to me about Toronto and the Angels here.
Yeah, Toronto and the Angels is definitely an interesting game. If you look at the entire slate, right, it's a 9 total. That's the highest one on the slate. So it has to be a game that we have some type of interest in. First of all, I hate Griffin Canning. I never like to play him. He naturally gets ownership sometimes. On this slate, it doesn't look like he is, but he does sometimes on the slates, obviously because he's going against Toronto. Toronto's a team that doesn't strike out a ton. So I think overall, I do not want to play Griffin Canning. I know the field won't either, but he'll be a fade for me. Same with this Burr guy. I know it's a bullpen game, so I'm not playing the pitchers, but I do want to play the bats. I do want to look at them here. I know we talked about this on the show yesterday. We talked about the Tigers team total being higher on like SaberSim and other spots than on like some of these other sports books. And that's kind of similar here when you look at like Toronto. It's slightly higher over there on Toronto and both the Angels. Like, I mean, Toronto's team total is at 5, and I see it like in like that like mid 4s, like the 4.75 range on Toronto at some spots. We're at 4.5 with juice on the over. I just think it's a pretty good spot to like be heavy on Toronto. I know everyone else will agree, right? They're going to be an offense that a lot of people get to, but I think it's a good spot for these Blue Jays. You get Springer and Varsho and Vlad at the top. Horowitz, who hit one out yesterday at 3.9K, is a nice value. And there's value up and down throughout this lineup that you can, have some confidence in that help you to get in these stud pitchers. So I really like the Blue Jays here. I've attacked Griffin Canning all year. I'm going to attack him again. I think it's a perfectly fine spot. And I don't hate getting exposure to some of these Angels. Specifically, Zach Nato, who's been having a massive year. He's been absolutely awesome this year. Taylor Ward, Chenal, Moniak, I always mess up his name, Matt Thesis or whatever, Theasis, and then even Nico Cavadas at first base. He's just a 2K punt that would help get a lot in your lineup. So this is a really good game. It's clearly a spot to like load up on the bats more so than the pitching. I'm going to full fade the pitching, and I'm going to get exposure to these bats for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. No real interest in the pitching here. I think either offense could get there. Two bad bullpens as well behind both Canning and then whoever the Blue Jays actually end up rolling out there. It seems somewhat up in the air. I do think Ryan Burr is going to make the start, but some of these bullpen games, like we get the sites that follow this stuff listing their projected long relief pitcher. We've seen multiple times it doesn't always end up that way. And the thing I like about for the Angels here is like Toronto doesn't really have a strong bullpen, right? I hate going like the Rays were the first team to start the bullpen game, and they did it because their starters sucked, but they had an awesome bullpen, so they could go one inning at a time. And for a game like this, like I mean, it's hard to like the Angels in general, but it's going to be bad pitchers every inning coming out of the pen for Toronto. So I do think the Angels as a contrarian stack make for a fun play tonight. And I mean, we've just seen a lot of runs in Toronto between these two teams. Sometimes that trend continues, especially because usually, and that's the case here, both bullpens a little bit worn down from playing these high scoring games over the last couple of days. Let's get to Houston and Baltimore up next. This one in Baltimore. Weather-wise, should be pretty neutral, around 70 degrees. A little bit of wind out to right field. Some humidity. Should play fairly neutral in terms of pitcher-hitter splits. Corbin Burns going for Baltimore. Me and Boyden had a long conversation about Burns before his last start against Boston. I have played almost no Burns this season, and that's been fine for the most part. He's had a good season for the Orioles, but if you scroll through the game log, I don't think he has had a 30-point game since the very first game he pitched on March 28th. He put up 37 fantasy points against the Angels. There's one there against Seattle. That makes sense. And that's it for 30-plus fantasy point games for Corbin Burns, despite being healthy all season, despite making, it must be, 25 starts at this point.
And you probably played him against Seattle. You probably said, I don't care, it's Seattle.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I might have even got that good game. Or the first game of the season I might have played. I can't remember, honestly, at this point. But, he just hasn't been, despite his good overall season, he has not been a very good DFS play. He's been popular a lot. He's been expensive every single time he's pitched. And it just doesn't get enough strikeouts. It's hard to imagine that changes here against the Astros. So Burns is off of my list, even on a 5-game slate. I'm sure people will play him, pulling up ownership now. Okay, yeah, 25% Corbin Burns. Okay, well, I'm not going to play him. Probably not going to Eric Getty here either. I have played him way more than I played Corbin Burns, despite Burns obviously being the better pitcher. But 7,500 against a Baltimore team who can obviously do some damage. Probably a pass for me on both these pitchers. And hitting here, I think you can get contrarian with either of these stacks, but they don't super excite me. It's just Burns is like the soft contact ground ball master, which isn't great for him for DFS purposes, and obviously hard to stack against him when he doesn't give up much hard contact. So kind of finding myself mostly out on this game. What about you, Travis?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on I don't need to get the Burns, right? He's not this must. Now, if you were MMEing a lot of teams, I wouldn't probably X him in particular, but I think he's a good play. I think he's fine. I prefer other options to him. That's the problem. When I look at all the other options, I just would rather get to them. That's one of the issues that I'm gonna run into. I actually like Arrighetti more than you do. One thing I want to check with this lineup, because I think it matters a little bit, is Baltimore has some strikeouts in that lineup, right? Two guys in particular, Colton Cowser, who's at the top, where that could be, Arrighetti could start with the top of the lineup and get that third at bat against him because he can strike out a ton. Ramon Urias, who can strike out a ton as well. Those are two specific guys that I know are bad at that. I can't remember all the other ones, but I know those are two that I always like see that I have like bets on basically on their over on strikeouts that I'm on. And I just think Arrighetti, I respect everything he's done this year. Like, it's just an out of respect play, right? He's been so damn good this entire season. I mean, he just put up 40 against Boston at Boston. Like, he's just been incredible. So I'm going to chase the upside with him, and I just think you're going to get it at low enough ownership that it makes sense. I mean, I'm seeing him at 5% on save. I just think it's too low.
Really?
If you told me he was going to be like 20%, I don't think I would do it, right? But at 5, and even if that 5 becomes 10, I think I'm okay with that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, I somehow overlooked that. I haven't built my teams yet. 5% Arrighetti seems ridiculous on this slate. I know Baltimore's a good team, but I mean, we've seen plenty of pitchers have good games against the Orioles over the course of the year, and especially lately. So yeah, I'm with you. That does seem a little silly to me.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a spot you can play both sides. Like, if someone said, I want to play Baltimore today and Arrighetti, I would not say that's dumb. Now, would I say, hey, stack up like 50% Baltimore and like, Arrighetti 40% and be just like split the other way? No, I don't think I would do that. But I know Sabre does some crazy stuff like that. I remember when I was looking at the final, actually, it basically said Oakland A's and Bassett. It had like 50% A's and 40% Bassett. I was like, well, one of these is going to win. And then, of course, the A's went absolutely off. But that's how I'm okay playing both sides of it. I think that's perfectly fine. I even think you could get away with Houston today if you think their ownership is going to be low. Let's kind of check out their ownership because I think there is some leverage there. And they're just the Houston Astros. And if you're getting them all below 10%, which you are, I don't think they're the craziest idea here on this slate. So I think Houston's in the conversation today. I think Baltimore's in the conversation. I'm with you. I don't need Corbin Burns. And I like Arrighetti. I think he is someone that, if you pull up the cores today, I hope at least someone puts him in the cores. I'm not saying you have to have Arrighetti across the board on the cores today, but I hope someone puts him on the cores today.
It might be me. I think you've kind of convinced me on Arrighetti. I just don't. Sometimes I make this mistake where I kind of just write off pitchers based on the matchup.
Yeah,
I think which is what I did again with Arrighetti against Baltimore. But looking more into it, yeah, he's been pretty good and seems to be getting better. I've been on him a lot this year. He's mostly come through.
And do you see Houston's that team that, like, when they have a young pitcher, we're like early in the season, we want to ride it all year. We did it with Hunter Brown. We kind of done it with Arrighetti. Like, I just think it's a mistake not to. And it's a short slate. People are going to play Baltimore, right? If you look at their team total, it's like the second highest on the slate. They're naturally going to get ownership. Like, I just think it's crazy not to at the price tag.
I mean, I do think he's capable of a good game here, but even more so than that, it's the leverage you get from playing him, right? Nobody's going to play him, and you're going to take down. I mean, Baltimore's going to be what, 20% owned, 20% owned on the slate.
Yep.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Honestly, probably jumping on the Arrighetti train at this point. Only 2 more games to talk about, so we'll have to have someone emerge to get me off of that one. But
do you like Houston? I don't know if you touched on that too much. I know you don't like Burns, but like I do think Houston's worth at least considering. No, you don't like him?
So Burns is like the strikeout rate is way down, but he's traded the K rate for like a league leading amount of soft contact. Like nobody is he throws this cutter, and it's just like it reminds me of like I don't know, like the Greg Maddux or Tom Glavine or something of the past, where it's like, yeah, you can make contact with it, but you're never doing any damage. And it seems like Corbin Burns has morphed himself into that kind of pitcher. And I would rather actually take hitters against a pitcher who gets strikeouts, but also gives up hard contact, right? Because they challenge in the middle of the zone. Corbin Burns has turned himself into, he throws these cutters that are just on the corners, and you just can't square them up and really do much with them. Burns' biggest weakness is his complete inability to control the run game. He's given up, I think, 35 steals on the year, which by far leads the league, but Houston doesn't really have that much speed.
Yeah.
I mean, Altuve, Myers.
They do have Ben Gamel in the lineup. I'm not saying play Ben Gamel, but that is funny that
they don't really have a team set up to take advantage of Burns' biggest weakness. So probably not going to go to too much Houston despite not being on Burns himself.
Well, I think you've sold me, DC. I sold you on Arrighetti. You sold me on not wanting to get Houston as much. So you know where to send your complaints in the DMs if they work out. So
it's one of the reasons we do these shows. It's fun to talk it out. Someone else taking DFS seriously. And I think it's a mistake to come on these shows too completely sold on exactly what you want to do. I think we're on the same page on that game after talking it out. Next game on the slate. It is the last game in the early window. It is Philadelphia and the Atlanta Braves. 8 total in this one. Essentially a pick 'em via the betting market. Both teams projected for right around 4 runs. It'll be Spencer Schwellenbach taking the mound for the Braves. I was on this guy early, and he has definitely delivered a lot of times at pretty low ownership and low price points. He still is, I think, underpriced for his talent level. I'm a big believer in general in Schwellenbach, 8,500 tonight. He does have to face the Phillies, though, which is far from an ideal matchup. So I'm kind of still honestly on the fence about Schwellenbach. And then Carlos Sanchez, another one. He's been a little bit all over the place this year as well. Gets a ridiculous amount of ground balls. So the strikeouts aren't usually there, but man, he gets a lot of the worm burners, allows him to pitch deep in games. You saw it. I mean, his last appearance was like the epitome of a Carlos Sanchez start. Complete game, 1 earned run, but only the 4 strikeouts, right? No walks, only 99 pitches to get through 9 innings against the Nationals. But that was good for 31.6 DraftKings points. So I think you could make a case for either of these pitchers. I almost never play any hitters against Sanchez. So that'll be something I stick to tonight. Just too many ground balls. Doesn't give up, 5 home runs in 140 innings. So no thanks on the Braves. Offense for me. And I do think Schwellenbach, I think this is a risky start for him. But I do think if he's on his game, he could get the strikeouts regardless. Curious where you stand on Schwellenbach, Sanchez, and Phillies and Braves in general.
Yeah, I mean, Schwellenbach's an interesting conversation because I definitely wasn't like a huge believer early in the year, and I left some money on the table with that, right? I can definitely admit that. If you look at just his game logs, right? At this point, we have a pretty big sample of the season. He has had 10.5 or more, so double digits in every game but one. The one game was his second start against Boston, like rightfully so, right? It's the Boston Red Sox in Boston. Like, it's not crazy. Other than that, though, he has been so consistent. Even like big games against the Mets, right? Who are a team that don't strike out a ton. Like, he even got 26 against the Padres. Like, I think he is someone that you can consider as matchup proof right now, for the most part. I know you're not excited about him going against a team like the Dodgers, but like, if he puts up 20 plus against the Dodgers, I wouldn't be surprised, Now the question is,
you mean the Phillies, right? Going up against the Phillies?
Well, no, sorry. I said the Dodgers just because like they're like probably the best team in the league, but honestly, the Phillies are probably the best team in the league. So same thing. I was just using the Dodgers as like the normal example. But yes, against the Phillies, I wouldn't be surprised either, right? 2 of the best teams in the league are the Dodgers and the Phillies. So my debate is, do I want to play him at 25% ownership against the Phillies? I think that's the conversation that I want to have is, do I think the ownership is too high? Part of me is a little nervous about that. I just think it's like, again, it's the Phillies. But I don't think the Phillies have been great over the past like 15 days or so, where I think you leave him in the pool. Is he someone I want to have like be extremely overweight on? Probably not. It feels like a good spot to be like even with the field on. I know it's like not a great take. Like it's, it sounds like a cop out, but that's where I would be at it. And I would want to play the Phillies. The other question I would have is, I know I shouldn't say we. I know I don't like the Braves, and I love to just play pitchers against them. I know it didn't completely work out with Nola yesterday. I'm not a huge Christopher Sanchez guy, but he is going to be very low owned, and this lineup isn't great. I don't hate the Sanchez idea, but I think I prefer Schwellenbach over Sanchez if I had to like pick, when I regard like the price tag, ownership, and everything, I would just go more Schwellenbach for sure. So I think it's a spot where, as we look at the game as a whole, Schwellenbach is a good play. I get exposure to him, probably even with the field. And then that Phillies offense, I would try to get overweight on them today, just because I do like Schwellenbach, but the Phillies look like they are going to be under-owned today, and I'll take some chances.
Yeah, I'm on Schwellenbach over Sanchez as well. A couple things. I always mention the Mariners and their pitchers' home road splits where they dominate in Seattle and generally struggle much more on the road. At least so far, Sanchez has a crazier split than any Seattle pitcher. Everything, like, DraftKings fantasy points per game, ERA, WHIP, runners allowed, K to walk ratio. It's like at least twice as bad on the road as it is at home. I obviously try not to buy into too much of that, right? I'm sure those numbers will converge over time with a pitcher like Sanchez, but it is at least something going against him here against the Braves. Not a huge strikeout pitcher in general. 10% for him from SaberSim. That seems fair, right? It's $7K for Sanchez. Yeah. I mean, I can't say he's a bad play there. So
yeah, it's fair. The one argument I would make that I don't like, the thing I'm not loving about Sanchez is me, I don't like this Braves team, but those righties against Sanchez as a lefty, it's a good set of them, right? If you look at the lineup, that bottom of the order, it's Laureano 5, Duvall, Arcia, Murphy, and Urshela. The two lefties he has to deal with are Matt Olson and Michael Harris. So it definitely doesn't seem like a dream spot for someone like Sanchez, who I feel is a little bit sensitive towards the matchups. But again, it's the Braves. They could be awful any start. But yeah, that's the one thing I noticed with the lineup. And I told you I didn't love the Braves lineup yesterday. But this one with these righties against the lefties, it's just a little more appealing.
Yeah, a couple things from chat here. Steven, loyal watcher of the show. Would you guys say the best guys to attack Sanchez with are guys with high launch angles versus sinkers? And you absolutely can dive into that sort of data in MLB. And I would actually say in general, yes, you are correct. But when you start breaking it down via, handedness and pitch count and launch angles, you start to get to some very small sample size where it's like if a hitter hit one home run versus a sinker, they're going to come up to the top of the list. And, it's easy to go too far, right? To get too granular with the data. You agree with that, Mango?
I agree. I mean, I do like looking at it. I think it's interesting.
Or to break ties, if you're choosing.
Yes. I agree with you. To break ties and stuff, I'm cool with that. I used to do it a lot, but I realized the time that I put in it didn't feel worth it, especially when I just think there's other ways I could spend my time.
It can just one at bat can swing it the other way, where you thought this guy sucked against low sinkers, and now he hit a home run and everything's good. I mean, if it can change that quickly, it's not something you want to rely on for your, again, tiebreaker. It shouldn't be the first thing you look at.
Well, here's a great example. So obviously I'll reference the live final probably a lot on the next X amount of shows I do baseball, because I just paid very close attention to it. And one of the things is I took the Astros against James Paxton. Well, one reason I did it is because Paxton sucks, and then he was out of the game early because he got hurt. And if you looked at all those numbers, you would be led to certain players, right? You'd be led to Jordan against a lefty who crushes lefties, just Paxton's a bad lefty, right? In that spot where he'd be a good play. Now I know Jordan did good, but one guy you probably wouldn't have gravitated towards was probably the best play on the Astros, and that was Jeremy Pena. Well, everyone played Desideno or whatever his name is at 35%. Pena was 5% owned and absolutely nuked the slate because he was just going against guys throwing BP out there instead. So that's where you do run yourself into some trouble sometimes. So it's tough, but I agree with you. It's more a tiebreaker thing. And it's things that I know from my own research that are in the back of my head that when I'm doing tiebreakers, I'll kind of lean into a little bit.
Yeah, we agree there. Final point I would make on that question is more of a general point, is don't stop looking for edges like that. They can exist anywhere in any sport. Sometimes it takes a bit of intuition on your own part to say, oh, what about this? And then you dig into the data, and there's enough data on every sport now where you can, kind of prove your theory true or false based on actual numbers. So again, I think it's a good question. The specific answer, at least for me, is if you go too far into the granular stuff, righty versus lefty, when it's less than 80 degrees on a Sunday versus sinkers, low in the zone, you can break it down as far as you want to, but the lower the numbers get, the lower the denominator gets in terms of the amount of times that event has actually occurred, the less useful it is. And also, this is the argument against BVP, or one of them, right, Mangone, is the skill level of the players in question, pitchers, hitters, whatever, changes all the time. You can't, if someone was rocking Madison Bumgarner when he was an ace, right, or Bumgarner owns someone when he was an ace, it doesn't apply to when he's on his way out of the league and is one of the worst pitchers still making starts. So, long spiel on that, but it was a 5-game slate. We got time to do it. So I think our general thoughts there, mostly aligned. Back to Phillies and
DC, the way that you did it yesterday, I thought was great. It was with the Juan Soto stuff, right? Where it was like, you notice something with like the lefty matchup, and like, I think it's when you can take advantage of like low owned stuff. I think that's where I like it the most, where like you see something that's very low owned, or you see something that's very high owned that the field is not understanding, that you see in like a pitcher, and you think it's like a really good fade. That's where I kind of think it's best to take advantage of.
Yes. So when I do my initial read, you try to come up with your own takes, or at least I do. And then a lot of my day is spent trying to like, what am I missing here? Why could I be wrong? Why doesn't the field agree with my, the research that I've done? And so I spend a lot of time trying to almost like disprove my own initial thoughts. And I don't know. We can move on from it. Any final thoughts? We spent a long time away from the actual game here, Philadelphia and Atlanta. I think I'm more interested in the pitching here in general, but I wouldn't be shocked to see either of these stacks go off either. I think maybe you have a similar take.
No, I agree. Like, I could see it, but like, it's like, you sound wishy-washy when you say it, but this is definitely a really tough game to peg for sure. I could see a lot of things winning from this. I just don't love Sanchez.
Sometimes you just get some weird shit in the chat that I don't even know if you have a response to this one. It's always very distracting to me when we get one of those comments. It's like, okay. So,
I've never done that, so if anyone's wondering,
anyone
like that, I haven't done that with the piano. So
let's get to the last game on the slate. It is the New York Mets and San Diego Padres. Got a 7.5 total in this one. Pretty typical San Diego weather, mild, not much wind, humid, whatever. Dylan Cease going for the Padres. He's been awesome this year for the most part. It's been a little shaky, I suppose, his last 3 times, but he's had at least a few monster performances, has Dylan Cease. I think appropriately priced at 9,400. And then Luis Severino going for the Mets. I've definitely played Severino more than most this season. I did unfortunately miss out on the Miami start. Was that on the Sunday afternoon? Maybe not on the main slate. I'm not sure. But I missed out on the 42 burger from Severino, and I kind of think I would have played him. So
was that against Seattle?
Miami.
Oh, Miami. Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah. I think it was one of those like weird day game ones that was like.
It probably wasn't on the main slate. If it was, then joke's on me. But anyway, for this slate, really no interest in Severino. Too much contact from the Padres lineup. I don't think Severino is going to get the strikeouts. He's generally a pretty low strikeout guy anyway. I do think Cease is interesting here, although, yeah, he's going to get a lot of ownership. Sabres got him right around 55% as the highest owned pitcher on the slate, which I think is fair. But, you know me, Mangone, always hesitant to pay the big price tag on the chalk pitcher I think it's fair to say this is not an ideal matchup. It's a pretty spunky Mets squad. What are you doing with Padres and Mets, Mangone?
Yeah, like one thing I noticed, Sabre has Cease 22.45 projection. They have Skeens at 22.09. For me, like that's where I just like flip them. But like I know it's not a huge flip. What I do is I'd probably put Skeens over Cease and then bump Cease down. I just would rather play Skeens more over Cease. And of course, there's a $500 difference, so I'd make sure the projection adjusts for that. But that's one thing that I'll definitely be doing on this slate. I'd rather have more Skeens than I would Cease. It's just not an ideal spot against this Mets team. I know it's not a great ballpark and they have a low total, but I just don't want to play that much Cease. I actually don't mind the bats a little bit here. If we look, that's the 7.5 total, but it's a rough slate when it comes to the totals. The reason I think the Mets are kind of in play is, one, the leverage on Cease, right? He's at 55%. It's just like, it's the highest owned pitcher on the slate. Two, when I pull up the Sabre stuff right now, when I pull up all the Sabre stuff, we got Lindor at 3.6%. Like, that's insane, right? Like, I just think the Mets ownership and the Cease projection, projected ownership, you just have to like them here. So I'm definitely interested in this Mets team. I think they're definitely in play. And I think the Padres are in play too. I don't like Severino. He'll be a full fade for me. He's not someone I absolutely love. And this isn't a good matchup for him. Typically, you want like the good swing and miss spots. It's just not a good spot for him.
You don't want to play Severino.
Yes, agreed. Like I wouldn't play him at any cost. And I just think this is a spot where I'll be under on Cease. I'll be fading Severino. And I'll have some interest in the bats. I don't think they're bad plays here.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. I mean, 55% own Cease on a 5-game slate against a pretty good offense as an expensive option doesn't feel that great to me. So he's probably not going to end up on the main team. No interest in Severino, so it does come to the bats. Did you mention the possibility of a Padres stack? I mean, Severino gives up power. He gives up speed. It sucks with the park, but it's only 5 games, so 6 or 7 runs could be enough. I think the Padres are a little bit interesting here.
That's why I'm like in on it. Like I think that it's just a 5-game slate. It's one we can get away with. Like if you just look at all the parks today, and let's just go through them one more time. The Pirates, it's 75 degrees, so that's not a big deal. Blue Jays Park, I mean, it's fine. It's not bad, but it's not great. So there's nothing great there. Baltimore,
I mean, they're pretty much all equal tonight. They're close to it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And that's why I'm willing to play it. It's not just that though. It's like look at the guys that are going on the mound throughout. It's an elite pitching slate. Severino is someone we can take advantage of. Padres had a really hot August. I know they struggled in Colorado, but I don't think it's a crazy spot for these options. And again, if the Mets ownership holds true, where they're like 2 and 3%, I don't know if it is, but you just have to like it. And I'm sure Sabre's going to push out a Mets stack or two for me. So I'm sure they'll be more like 5 or 6%, but I'm definitely going to have some exposure. I think it's crazy not to. And who doesn't mind a late night hammer, right? All the games start kind of early and there's one game to like close the night out. A game stack of a late night hammer is not crazy.
Yeah, 2 hours and 30 minutes clear of all the other games. We can see all the other games finished by the time this game even starts. Our guy Jake Swale says maybe a low-scoring playout. Yeah, big game for both teams.
Yeah, it is big because of the wild card.
Especially the Padres have a very strong bullpen after Cease. So, yeah, I think Lindor specifically is a good play. Probably not going to end up on too many Mets, but I think the Padres stack is certainly a decent way to go against Luis Severino. All right, Mangone, let's get to the good stuff here. Your favorite stack on this slate and your favorite contrarian stack.
Yeah, favorite stack. The Blue Jays are for sure the favorite stack of the slate. I mean, they've been hitting the ball great, and they're such a good spot. So I really like them. Favorite contrarian stack of the slate. It's gotta be Padres or Mets. I'll go with the Mets just because I am a Mets fan, and I don't know the leverage. I'm a sucker for some good leverage sometimes. I know Dylan Cease isn't a guy I'm dying to attack, but I like this late night hammer. It's definitely good.
Yeah, I do like your picks as well. I will go with the Angels as my favorite stack against a Blue Jays bullpen game. Don't stack the Angels very often, but I'm interested tonight for sure. And then contrarian stack. Yeah, it's got to be. Did you say the Padres is yours?
No, I took the Mets. You can take the Padres.
Yeah, I'll take the Padres against Luis Severino in the Mets bullpen. I'm sure they'll be somewhat owned, but I do think they're in a pretty good spot tonight. Mangone, your most important pitcher. Who do you think you'll be most leveraged against the field on tonight?
Yeah, it'll be Mr. Arrighetti. He'll be my most important pitcher for sure on the slate. So he's the guy. I'm excited to roster him and take my chances. So hopefully Steve Boyd is not standing up and clapping today in his Baltimore shirt.
You know, I gotta say, Mangone, it's not all that often that you really convince me on something on an MLB slate, but you got me today. I'm joining you on the Arrighetti train. He will be my most important pitcher as well. Home run call, Mangone. Who's going yard?
Yeah, well, hopefully you didn't follow me on Aaron Nola yesterday. Aaron Nola was not great. That was not a good one. But home run call. We'll go to that. Home run call.
Did not call you on Aaron Nola at 0-0 no.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have as much as I thought I was going to have, but it was not a fun ride for sure. All right, home run call. Let's go with let's see. Oh, yeah, I want to go with the Blue Jay for sure. We'll go with Vladimir Guerrero. He hits one out. Not surprising, but he is the guy. He is him, as the kids say.
I like it. Give me Jake Cronenworth. Should be hitting third for the Padres against Luis Severino this evening. And finally, your favorite hitter on the entire slate.
Yeah, favorite hitter. I'm going to the outfield, and I'm going with George Springer. He's gotten hot again, and he's going to bang one out early on, too. He's another home run guy. So we'll go with George Springer. He has a big day.
I like that call. Gut call here, but I think Ellie De La Cruz wins the battle between the two phenoms of Skeens versus Cruz tonight. Obviously, going to get some leverage. I think Skeens will challenge him with fastballs. And, if Ellie meets one of those with the barrel, it will be long gone, given the velocity of his swing and Skeens' fastball. So I'll go with Ellie De La Cruz as I think the best option on the slate once you consider ownership and upside and all that stuff. That'll do it for this Thursday MLB show. We do appreciate all you guys watching. Hit the like button on your way out if you have not yet done so. Of course, the show will be back tomorrow, premium only, but it will be the three-man show, me, Boyden, and Stats, and plenty of other RPS content here on the YouTube channel. Hopefully we'll see some RPS logos up top, but until Sunday for the pre-show, Friday for the members, that'll do it for us. He's Mangone. I'm Draft Cheat. We're out of here.